Yo, fresh meat. You dropped the soap yet? The voice echoed through the concrete corridor, dripping with laughter and venom. Inmate eyes turned. The new guy hadn't even made it past the first gate, and already the wolves were circling. Ricky, Rhino, Dalton stood at the end of the block, smirking like a king on his throne of chaos. 6'5", tattoos creeping up his neck like vines, a body built from steel and steroids. He leaned against the railing, calling out again. "What's wrong, rookie? Cat got your tongue, or you too scared to speak English in my house?" The new inmate didn't answer. He just kept walking. Tall, broad shoulders, calm eyes, skin dark as midnight, smooth as carved obsidian. His uniform hung perfectly, his steps measured. The guards flanked him, but they weren't steering him. He was leading them. His name tag read, D. Cole. But inside Riverside Federal Penitentiary, names didn't mean anything. Only dominance did. Rhino's laugh filled the air. I said, "What's your name, boy?" Cole stopped, slowly turned his head. The air went still. "Name's Daniel," he said, voice deep and even. "You'll remember it." A hush spread across the tier. In prison, confidence was a weapon, and Daniel Cole had just drawn first blood. Rhino's grin widened. "Cute. You got jokes. Let me explain how this works. Danny boy, I run this block. You breathe when I say so. You eat when I'm done. You get me?" Daniel looked him dead in the eye. "I don't follow man." The laughter died fast. Even the guards looked up. Rhino's crew exchanged glances, half shocked, half eager for the show that was about to go down. Rhino pushed off the railing and strutted closer. "Big talk from a rookie. You must think you're special. You box or something?" Daniel's eyes flicked up. "Something like that." "Oh, yeah." Rhino grinned, cracking his knuckles. "Good. I like breaking athletes. Makes my mornings fun." The guards kept walking, pretending not to hear. In Riverside, they let the animals sort out their own food chain. As the cell doors clanged open from morning yard, the whisper started. "Rhino's gonna eat that dude alive. He don't last a day. Another pretty boy thinking he's tough." By noon, the bet pool was full. In the yard, Ricky, Rhino, Dalton approached like a freight train. Daniel sat on a bench, quiet, staring at the sky. Rhino tossed his apple at him. It hit Daniel's shoulder and rolled into the dirt. "Pick it up, rookie. Show some respect." Daniel didn't move, didn't even blink. Rhino stepped closer, his crew forming a half circle. "You deaf boy?" I said, "Pick it up." Finally, Daniel looked up, his voice low. "You sure you want to do this?" The yard went silent, the kind of silence that tastes like blood before it spills. Rhino smirked. "Oh, I wanna." He swung first, fast, heavy, brutal. But Daniel moved like water. One slip, one pivot, then crack. The sound of bone meeting earth echoed through the yard. Rhino's body hit the ground before anyone processed what happened. His nose shattered, his forearm twisted, and his pride evaporated in front of 200 inmates. Daniel didn't even look at him. He just stepped over the body, eyes calm. "Lesson 1, he said quietly. "Don't mistake peace for weakness." Guards blew whistles. Sirens screamed. But no one dared move. And as they dragged Rhino's limp body off the dirt, every man watching whispered the same thing. "Who the hell is this guy?" The answer would come later. But by then it would be too late. Because Daniel Cole wasn't just another inmate. He was the undefeated MMA champion who vanished after his last fight ended in tragedy. And now, fate had locked him in a cage again. Only this time, he wasn't fighting for fame. He was fighting to survive. The isolation cell was cold. Concrete, steel, silence. Daniel sat on the narrow cot, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. His knuckles were swollen, a faint red streak running down his wrist, the price of restraint. Outside the small slit of a window, daylight flickered like a dying flame. He could still hear the echo, Rhino's body hitting the dirt, the shock in the crowd, the look in the guard's eyes. Undefeated MMA champion. The voice of his old coach echoed in his head. "You don't win by rage, Cole. You win by control." He exhaled, slow, deep, Control. The metal door creaked open. A guard stepped in. Officer Ramirez. Late 40s, tired eyes, and a look that said he'd seen too many broken men. You made quite an entrance, Ramirez said, flipping through a file. 1 day in, and you already put Rhino in medical. Daniel didn't look up. He picked a fight. Ramirez smirked. Yeah, that's what they all say. But here's the thing. Nobody's ever won one against Rhino. Not until you. He shut the file and leaned in. So tell me something, Cole. What's a world champ doing in a cage like this? Daniel stayed quiet. The officer shrugged. Suit yourself. But I'll tell you this. Word's out. You embarrassed the wrong man. Rhino's got friends in every block. You just painted a target on your back. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. Watch your six, champ. The heavy door slammed shut again. Daniel leaned back, eyes closed. He wasn't new to danger, but this wasn't the octagon. This was war without rules. Flashback. 2 years earlier. The roar of the crowd. The blinding lights. The blood on the mat. Daniel the Phantom Cole. Undefeated, unstoppable, untouchable. 29 fights. 29 wins. He moved like shadow and struck like thunder. Every punch precise. Every takedown clean. Until that night. Round 3. His opponent, Victor the Bull Dre. A rematch. High stakes. Pride on the line. Daniel's fists moved on instinct. A right hook, a knee, a snap. The crowd erupted. The bull went down and didn't get up. Silence. Then screams. Trainers rushing in. Paramedics shouting. Daniel froze, staring at the motionless body. His gloves trembled. He hadn't meant to kill him, but intent didn't matter. The commission banned him. Sponsors vanished. And when the bull's family filed charges, his world imploded. Manslaughter. 6 years. Riverside Federal. Present day. Back in the cell. A siren blared outside, jolting Daniel from memory. He stood, running his hands through his hair. His mind was a battlefield, between guilt and discipline, between who he was and what he'd become. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Voices. 2 of them. That's him, right? The fighter? Yeah. Rhino's boys say he's dead meat soon as he's out of ISO. Daniel's jaw tightened. He knew it wouldn't end with one fight. In here, survival wasn't about strength. It was about psychology, dominance, and the wolves were already circling again. As the lights flickered out for lockdown, Daniel whispered to himself, almost a prayer, stay calm, stay sharp, don't let the cage win. But deep inside, another voice whispered back, the one he'd spent years trying to silence. Let it out. The metal door buzzed. A guard's voice barked, Cole, out! Yard time. Daniel stepped into the corridor. Squinting as fluorescent lights burned his eyes after 3 days in the dark. The air outside was heavy with heat and hostility. Inmates watched him from every direction, whispers trailing him like smoke. Yo, that's the dude who dropped Rhino. He dead. Rhino's boys waiting for him. Hope he got life insurance. Daniel ignored them, his face unreadable. Calm, but sharp, like a blade wrapped in cloth. As he entered the yard, his instincts kicked in. 4 corners, 2 guards, 30 inmates, and to the left, a table filled with Rhino's crew. 6 of them. Muscles, tattoos, and bad intentions. Their leader now, a wiry man with scars on his face. Trigger Torres, Rhino's right-hand man. Trigger stood up, grinning. Well, if it ain't the champ. He spread his arms, mocking applause. Welcome back, killer. You broke our boy's nose, jaw, and ego. Now we're here to break you. The yard fell quiet. Even the guards turned away. No one stopped fights in Riverside, not unless someone was dying. Daniel didn't flinch. He just looked at Trigger, scanning every movement, shoulders, feet, stance. He was reading him like a book. Trigger spat on the ground. You got any last words before we rearrange that pretty face? Daniel stepped forward. Yeah. He took a deep breath. You should have brought more men. Trigger laughed, right before Daniel moved. It happened fast. A jab, a grab, a twist. Trigger's wrist snapped like dry wood. Daniel spun, ducked, elbowed another man in the gut. Air whooshed out. The third came with a shiv. Daniel sidestepped, grabbed his arm, slammed his head into the fence. 3 down in 10 seconds. The yard exploded in chaos. The rest of Rhino's crew backed away, stunned. Trigger screamed, clutching his arm. You're dead, Cole. You hear me? Dead. Daniel leaned close, voice low. Then finish the job yourself. He walked away, calm as if nothing happened. But the look in everyone's eyes had changed. Fear, respect, and curiosity. Later that night, in the mess hall, Daniel sat alone. The whispers were louder now. That's when someone sat across from him. A tall, lean man with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. His prison blues were perfectly pressed. He didn't belong, not in the chaos around them. Name's Malik, he said. Daniel looked up, silent, waiting. Malik smiled slightly. Relax, champ. I'm not here to fight. Quite the opposite, actually. He leaned in. Word is you're the real deal. And from what I just saw out there, you don't need protection. But you might need allies. Daniel's brow furrowed. Allies? Malik nodded toward a table at the far end of the hall. A group of men sitting quietly, separate from the rest. Organized, watching everything. That's my circle. We keep order in Block C. We don't start wars, but we end them fast. He paused, his tone shifting. You humiliated Rhino's crew. They won't forget. Join us, and we make sure you see daylight again. Daniel studied him. There was something dangerous behind Malik's calm, intelligence, power, and secrets. I don't do gangs, Daniel said. Malik chuckled. Neither do I. I do business. And business needs muscle. He stood, sliding his tray aside. Think about it, champ. Prison's like chess. You can play alone, but not for long. As he walked away, Daniel's gaze drifted back to his food. He wasn't hungry. He'd fought men before. But now, he was realizing, in Riverside, the real fight wasn't about fists. It was about alliances. And every alliance came with a cost. That night, as lights went out, a folded note was slipped under his cell door. It read, Midnight, Laundry Room. Come alone. Daniel stared at it for a long time. Then, quietly, he smiled. Because no matter who called him, friend or foe, he was ready. The prison slept, or at least pretended to. But Daniel knew better. No one truly slept in Riverside Federal. Not when danger could slip through the dark as quietly as breath. He moved through the shadows, stepped soundless. The fluorescent hallway lights flickered, half dead, buzzing like tired flies. The air reeked of bleach, sweat, and secrets. Midnight, Laundry Room. He pushed the heavy steel door open. The hinges groaned like an animal in pain. Inside, the industrial washers rumbled, filling the air with a low mechanical growl. Steam hissed from pipes above, curling around the dim light like smoke. Daniel scanned the room. Empty. Then a soft click. The door locked behind him. Cute, he muttered. From the shadows, 3 figures stepped out, all wearing gray prison sweats, bandanas pulled low. Rhino's crew. Trigger Torres was front and center, his broken wrist now wrapped in duct tape. Rage burned in his eyes. Thought I'd give you a warm welcome back, champ, he said, voice hoarse. You embarrassed me in front of the whole yard. Took my reputation. Now I'm talking your life. Daniel didn't move, didn't flinch, just observed. The men had shivs, sharpened toothbrushes, and makeshift blades, glinting under the dim light. 3 against 1? Daniel asked quietly. Trigger sneered. Nah, 4. A 5th man emerged from behind the dryers. Huge, silent, scarred face. The kind of man whose punch could crack ribs like eggshells. Daniel sighed. Figures. Trigger's smirk widened. What's wrong, champ? No ref this time. Daniel took 1 step forward. And then chaos. The first attacker lunged. Daniel caught his wrist, twisted, and drove his knee into the man's ribs. Crack. The sound echoed through the room. Before the second could move, Daniel used the first man's body as a shield. The shiv slashed harmlessly across his shoulder. Daniel pivoted, slammed his elbow into the man's jaw. Another crunch. The third came swinging wildly. Daniel ducked, grabbed a laundry cart, and sent it crashing into his knees. The man dropped screaming. Only Trigger and the silent giant remained. Trigger's eyes were wide now. "What are you?" Daniel didn't answer. His breathing was steady, eyes cold. The giant came charging, a blur of muscle and fury. Daniel sidestepped, caught his arm, and twisted. 1, 2, then flipped the man over his shoulder. The floor shook on impact. Trigger stumbled back, horrified. You don't fight like no street punk." Daniel stepped closer. "I'm not." He grabbed Trigger's collar, slammed him against the dryer. The man gasped, feet dangling. Daniel leaned in, voice low and deadly calm. "You come for me again, and I won't stop at bones." Trigger spat blood, trembling. "You'll regret this." Daniel released him. "Already do." He turned toward the door, his heartbeat slowing back to normal. But before he could leave, a figure appeared in the doorway. Malik. He stood there, hands in pockets, watching everything with that same calm expression. "Efficient," Malik said, stepping over the groaning bodies. "You're even better than I thought." Daniel frowned. "You set this up?" Malik smiled faintly. "Let's say I tested your potential." He paused, tilting his head. "Now that I've seen what you can do, I want to make you an offer." Daniel didn't answer. Malik leaned closer, voice low. "There's something happening in this prison, bigger than fights and egos. You want to survive, Cole? Then you'll want to hear what I have to say." He dropped a folded piece of paper into Daniel's hand. "Read this when you're alone." Then Malik turned and disappeared into the dark corridor like a ghost. Daniel unfolded the note. It had just 5 words. "Meet me in the chapel." The prison chapel was the quietest place in Riverside, and the most dangerous. A place where men pretended to pray, but plotted in whispers. Where confessions weren't about sins. They were about power. Daniel stepped inside, the heavy oak door groaning behind him. The stained glass windows filtered moonlight into shards of red and blue across the pews. It would have been beautiful. Anywhere but here. Malik sat near the altar, alone, head bowed like a man in prayer. But Daniel could tell from the way his eyes tracked him. This wasn't worship. It was strategy. "Didn't think you were the church type," Daniel said quietly, sliding into the front pew. Malik smirked. "I'm not, but this is the only room without cameras at work." Daniel glanced around. He was right. Half the wires were cut, the lens above the altar covered in dust. "Smart," Daniel muttered. "You said you had something for me." Malik leaned back, folding his hands. "You've already figured out this place isn't just a prison." Daniel said nothing. Malik continued. "Riverside's a training ground. For them." Daniel frowned. "Them who?" Malik tilted his head. "Private contractors. Merc groups. Government rejects. They use inmates like us to find talent. Fighters. Enforcers. Killers." Daniel's eyes hardened. "I'm not interested in being anyone's weapon." Malik chuckled. "You already were, brother. You just got paid better for it back then." The silence between them grew thick. Malik's tone softened. "I know who you are, Daniel. Or should I say, the Reaper?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Don't call me that." Malik smirked. "The world's deadliest MMA champion. 29 fights. 29 wins. No one knew what happened after your last match. The world thought you retired. Truth is, you disappeared." Daniel's hands curled into fists. "I walked away. Didn't mean I stopped existing." Malik nodded slowly. "I heard about that fight in Tokyo. The kid you hit. He never woke up, did he?" Daniel's eyes flicked toward him, sharp. "You've done your homework." "I do it on everyone who enters this place," Malik said, "because one day, everyone's forced to pick a side." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "There's a shipment coming in 3 weeks. Drugs, weapons, all labeled as facility upgrades. The warden's in on it. The guards are paid to look away. But someone needs to make sure it goes through smoothly." Daniel's expression didn't change. "And You want me to what? Be your muscle? Malik shook his head. No, I want you to lead it. Daniel laughed once, bitter and sharp. You've got the wrong man. Malik smiled faintly. Do I? You broke Rhino without breaking a sweat. You handled Trigger's crew like they were children. The men here already follow your name. Whether you like it or not, you're becoming someone they fear. Daniel's voice was quiet, but every word hit like a hammer. I didn't come here to lead killers. I came here to survive my sentence. Malik's eyes glinted in the half-light. You don't survive in Riverside by staying out of it. You either control the storm or get buried in it. He stood, straightening his collar. Think about it, champ, because when that shipment lands, everyone will choose a side. And if you haven't picked yours by then, someone else will pick it for you. He started toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Daniel, he added, without turning back, if you ever want to know who really put you in here, come find me, because I know it was an accident. The door creaked open, spilling pale light across the chapel floor. Then Malik was gone. Daniel sat there for a long time, staring at the empty altar. His past, his prison, his future, all twisted together in ways he couldn't yet see. And for the first time since he'd arrived, a thought crept into his mind that made his stomach tighten. Maybe he wasn't the most dangerous man in Riverside. Maybe he was just the most useful. The warden's office sat high above the cell blocks, glass walls, polished floors, and a panoramic view of chaos below. A kingdom built on silence and fear. Warden Hayes leaned against his desk, watching the yard through bulletproof glass. Below, inmates moved like ants, predictable, controllable. All except one, Daniel Cole. Impressive, Hayes muttered to himself as he watched the security feed. He rewound the footage. The yard fight, the takedown, the impossible calm. He'd seen hundreds of men fight in this prison. None like him. The door buzzed open behind him. Officer Grant stepped in, tall, buzz-cut, eyes like cold steel. You wanted to see me, sir? Hayes nodded toward the screen. That one. Cole, what's the story? Grant hesitated. Transferred from Nevada State. Voluntary isolation for the first month. Clean record, no outbursts, no gang ties, no smuggling. He doesn't gamble, doesn't talk, doesn't even flinch. Hayes smiled. That's exactly what worries me. He clicked a button. Another screen lit up, showing the chapel camera feed. The one Malik had claimed was broken, except it wasn't. The sound crackled faintly as Malik's voice came through. There's a shipment coming in 3 weeks. The warden's in on it. Hayes chuckled quietly. Clever little prophet, isn't he? Grant frowned. Should we shut it down, sir? Hayes shook his head slowly. No, let him think he's winning. Let both of them think that. He turned his tone sharp. Cole's a weapon. A perfectly trained, self-control weapon. And weapons don't belong in storage. Grant's jaw tightened. You're saying use him? Hayes nodded. If you drop a shark in a pool of piranhas, you don't stop the fight. You sell tickets. He leaned closer to the monitor, studying Daniel's face frozen mid-frame, that unnerving calm, that predator stillness. Find out what broke him, Hayes said softly. Every man has a scar. Find his. Grant hesitated. And when we do, Hayes smiled. We'll remind him who holds the key to his cage. Down below, in the dim light of Block C, Daniel sat on the edge of his cot, staring at a single piece of paper slipped under his door. It wasn't standard issue, heavy cardstock, embossed seal. He unfolded it. Meeting. Warden's office, 0900 hours. No reason. No context. No explanation. Malik glanced at him from across the tier when he saw the letter. His face tensed. Be careful, champ. When the devil invites you upstairs, it's not for coffee. The next morning, the guards escorted Daniel through corridors that smelled of bleach and cold air, up the metal stairs, through 2 locked gates, past offices that looked more like a corporate boardroom than a prison. When the final door opened, the view hit him. Sunlight spilling through tall glass, the hum of air conditioning, and the faint scent of expensive cigars. Mr. Cole, Warden Hayes said, his tone warm, almost fatherly. Sit, please. Daniel didn't sit. You wanted to see me. Hayes smiled faintly. Direct. I like that. You caused quite a stir down there. You broke my yard champion, turned down gang protection, and somehow managed to make both sides curious instead of homicidal. That's rare. I'm not here to impress anyone. Hayes nodded, walking around his desk slowly. That's the thing. You're not trying, but you are. You're a walking storm, Mr. Cole. Everyone feels it. He stopped in front of him. I've read your file. The fight in Tokyo. The boy who didn't wake up. The disappearance. The silence. Daniel's jaw clenched. That file should have been sealed. Hayes smiled thinly. I have keys to a lot of sealed doors. A long pause. The hum of the air vent filled the silence. Then Hayes slid a folder across the desk. Inside were photos, blurry but unmistakable. Military men. Crates marked with government seals. Inmates moving them under the cover of night. I'm not stupid, Daniel said quietly. This place isn't a prison. It's a farm. Hayes chuckled. You catch on quick? We grow more than vegetables here, Mr. Cole. We grow talent. He tapped one of the photos. Men like you are wasted behind bars. I could get you out of here. Early, maybe a new name, new life. All I need is your cooperation. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Cooperation with what? Hayes leaned back, lighting a cigar. A very important shipment is arriving soon. I need someone I can trust to make sure it goes smoothly. Someone strong, respected, feared. Daniel exhaled slowly. And if I say no? Hayes took a long drag from his cigar, the smoke curling upward like a slow, poisonous thought. Then you'll stay here until you're old enough to forget what freedom feels like. Daniel stared at him, calm, unreadable. Then he stood. You think you control everyone in this place. Hayes smiled. I don't think, Mr. Cole. I know. Daniel paused at the door, his voice low. You ever heard of a man controlling a storm? Hayes' smile faded slightly as the door shut behind him. That night, from his windowless cell, Daniel stared at the darkness, hearing the distant sound of thunder rolling somewhere beyond the prison walls. He didn't know whether it was real or a warning, but one thing was certain. If the warden wanted a storm, he was about to get one. The next morning, the yard buzzed with its usual rhythm. Men jogging, lifting weights, murmuring secrets, plotting alliances. Except today, whispers carried a different edge. Fear, curiosity, speculation. Daniel Cole sat on the far edge of the basketball court, watching the yard like a general surveying a battlefield. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't react. And that, more than anything, unsettled the men around him. Ricky, Rhino, Dalton had recovered, but his pride hadn't. He limped slightly, nursing a swollen jaw and a twisted ego. He circled the benches where the rookies sat, pointing, sneering. You think you're tough, huh? You beat me once. Lucky. That ain't talent. That's coincidence. Daniel looked up, voice calm, low. Luck isn't part of this equation. Rhino froze. A chill ran through him. The kind only comes when someone sees through your bravado. The whisper spread quickly. By mid-morning, the entire yard knew. Daniel Cole wasn't ordinary. He was a weapon, a predator dressed in calm. Malik approached, leaning against the chain-link fence. Man, you're crazy. You don't even fight dirty, and yet everyone's afraid of you. Daniel didn't look at him. Fear is useful. Respect is better. Malik laughed, a nervous edge in his voice. Yeah, well, respect doesn't get you out of here. Warden wants to play his game. And guess what? He thinks you're his pawn. Daniel finally turned his gaze toward him. I know. The words were soft, almost polite, but the weight behind them pressed like a physical force. By noon, Daniel had a plan. He moved deliberately through the yard, not confronting anyone, not looking for trouble, but letting the fear ripple like a silent wave. Gang leaders who normally bellowed orders felt the unease, shifting nervously in their circle. Whispers of a storm coming traveled from cell block to cell block. Ricky Dalton, desperate to reclaim dominance, called his crew together. Tonight, he said, voice low and urgent. We're taking him out. No excuses. Beat him before he humiliates anyone else. That night in the recreation yard, The trap was set. Rhino's crew surrounded Daniel as he stretched calmly by the fence, arms loose, posture relaxed. The guards were a few steps away, pretending ignorance. Part of the warden's test, part of the yard's cruel dance. Rhino charged first, swinging with all the brute strength of a man who hadn't lost a fight in 5 years. Daniel sidestepped, effortless, fluid, the kind of movement that comes only from years of training and instinct. One by one, the attackers fell not brutally, not chaotically, but with precision, broken grips, twisted joints, exhausted muscles. Each movement was calculated, defensive, almost artistic. By the time the last man hit the dirt, the yard was silent. The other inmates froze, unsure whether to intervene, cheer, or run. Daniel stood in the middle of the circle, calm, breathing even, eyes scanning. "Lesson 2, he said softly. "Don't mistake patience for weakness. And don't mistake strength for arrogance." From the observation tower, Warden Hayes watched the entire event unfold. A rare frown creased his forehead. He had anticipated rebellion, chaos, even a fight, but not control this absolute. Grant's radio crackled. So easy handled them. All of them. Alone. Hayes leaned closer, lips tight. "Interesting," he murmured. "This one, he's not just a fighter. He's a chess master in a cage. Let's see how he plays the next move." The yard emptied slowly, whispers trailing like shadows. Daniel returned to his bench, arms resting on his knees, still calm, still silent. Malik approached cautiously. "You didn't even break a sweat. Everyone thinks you're untouchable now." Daniel's gaze lifted, eyes sharp. Untouchable isn't the goal. Survival is. Everything else is secondary. He looked toward the distant gate, toward freedom that seemed impossible, yet inevitable if he played it right. That night, as the prison lights dimmed, Daniel lay on his cot, listening to the echoing footsteps in the halls. He wasn't just a man in a cage anymore. He was a storm the prison didn't see coming, and every man who had tried to test him would remember it for the rest of their lives. Part 7 ends with Daniel asserting dominance without unnecessary brutality, showing intelligent strategy and restraint, keeping the story cinematic and tense. The morning announcement echoed through the hallways like a gavel striking cold stone. All inmates must report to the main hall for a mandatory assembly. The men moved like shadows, silent, tense. Everyone knew the warden rarely called these assemblies without a reason, and in Riverside, a reason usually meant chaos. Daniel walked last, keeping his head low, observing. His calm, deliberate movements contrasted sharply with the nervous energy around him. Ricky, Rhino Dalton trailed, still nursing his bruised ego, still seething with rage. Warden Hayes stood at the podium, tall, imposing, the kind of man who measured fear like a precious commodity. His eyes swept the room, landing on Daniel with a flicker of recognition. "Daniel Cole," Hayes said, voice echoing through the hall. Daniel raised an eyebrow, but remained silent. "You've made quite the impression," Hayes continued. "Impressive, yes, but dangerous. And in my prison, danger is a problem I solved personally." The whispering started immediately. Every inmate realized the subtle threat. Daniel didn't flinch. He had expected this. The warden stepped down, moving closer, each footstep deliberate. "You see, Daniel, Riverside is a finely tuned ecosystem. Every predator has its place. Every prey its limitations." Daniel's calm, steady gaze met Hayes. "And I suppose you're here to remind me of mine?" he asked evenly. Hayes smiled, slow, controlled. "Not remind. Test. I want to see just how far your talents extend when the stakes are real." Daniel studied him for a moment, then nodded once. "Very well. Show me your rules, Warden." By noon, the test had begun. Inmates were assigned tasks, forced into rivalries, pushed into situations designed to provoke violence. Daniel watched, waited, analyzing every movement, every whisper, every nervous glance. It didn't take long to identify the traps. The warden had hidden cameras, planted provocateurs, and even orchestrated a staged fight near the kitchen. Ricky Dalton smirked as he approached Daniel again. "Looks like they're setting you up for round 2, champ." You ready to prove that fancy footwork in front of the big guy? Daniel's voice was calm, ice cold. I don't prove anything to fools. Rhino laughed, misinterpreting the calm for fear. Oh, I'll make sure this one's unforgettable. The stage fight began. Two inmates lunged at Daniel simultaneously, a classic double trap. Daniel moved like liquid steel, sidestepping, redirecting, and using their momentum against them. Cries, grunts, and the slap of flesh against concrete echoed through the hall. But Daniel never raised a fist unnecessarily. Each strike, each pivot, each maneuver was precise, defensive, and controlling, a ballet of domination. The men hit the ground, bruised, humiliated, gasping. The entire hall watched in stunned silence. Daniel's voice cut through quiet. Lesson 3. Control your environment before it controls you. Warden Hayes leaned against the podium, arms crossed, nodding subtly. Impressed. Yes, but wary. Very wary. He knew Daniel wasn't just surviving. He was learning, adapting, predicting, turning every trap into leverage. Malik whispered from the back. You're untouchable, man. Nobody else could have done that. Daniel's expression remained unreadable. Untouchable isn't the point. Understanding the game, that's survival. The warden's eyes flicked toward Daniel one last time before retreating behind the shadows of the observation room. He had underestimated him, and underestimating Daniel Cole in Riverside Federal Penitentiary was a mistake you only made once. That night, in his cell, Daniel studied the yard's layout, the warden's patterns, and Rhino's crew. Every trap, every tension point, every fear. He wasn't just planning survival anymore. He was planning strategy. And when Riverside realized what he was capable of, it would be too late. The next morning, Riverside Federal was quieter than usual. Too quiet. Daniel moved the halls with his usual calm, noting every pair of eyes that lingered too long, every whisper carried through the vents. The warden's traps were still active, but he had already predicted them. In the corner of the cafeteria, Malik slid into the seat across from him. His voice was low, cautious. Look, you're making waves, Daniel. People are talking. You just turned a fight they set up into a lesson. They're scared. And the warden? He's watching your every move. Daniel didn't flinch. He chewed slowly, deliberately, eyes scanning the room. Fear makes people predictable, he said quietly. I'm not here to scare them. I'm here to make them useful. Malik's eyes widened. Useful? You mean you're planning something? Daniel's smile was calm, controlled, almost imperceptible. Survival isn't enough. To thrive here, I need allies. People who understand what it means to win, without losing themselves. By midday, Daniel had identified a few potential allies. Inmates who weren't just strong, but smart, disciplined, and patient. First was Terrence Doc Johnson, a former combat medic whose calm hands had saved more lives than most guards could count. Next, Leo the Brain Martinez, an ex-lawyer with connections both inside and outside the prison. And finally, Malik, whose street smarts balanced Daniel's precision and strategic thinking. They met in the shadows of the laundry room, away from cameras. Here's the plan, Daniel began, voice low. We navigate the yard, the work assignments, and the warden's tests. We build influence quietly. One day, when the warden's overreach is exposed, we turn into leverage. Doc leaned forward. You really think we can take on the system without them noticing? Daniel's eyes were steady, unwavering. Not take it on. Navigate it. Bend it. Use it. And when the time comes, we'll control it. But only if we stay disciplined. That afternoon, Daniel's movements were deliberate. He let Rhino approach him again, this time with his pride partially rebuilt, a smug grin plastered across his bruised face. You ready for another round, champ? Rhino sneered. Daniel tilted his head. Calm. Unafraid. I'm never ready for a fight I don't need to take, he said softly. Rhino's smirk faltered. What? Strategy beats brute force every time, Daniel replied, eyes unwavering. Rhino's crew exchanged uneasy glances. The whispers started again. That new guy, he's different. Different doesn't last here. By evening, word of Daniel's restraint, intelligence, and dominance spread quietly through the ranks. He wasn't just surviving fights anymore. He was earning respect. Fear mixed with admiration in equal measure. The secret alliance began taking shape. Small favors, shared knowledge, subtle guidance. Daniel taught his allies to read the patterns, anticipate the warden's moves, and protect themselves without drawing attention. Malik grinned. You're turning Riverside into a chessboard. Everyone else? Pawns. You? The player. Daniel's gaze was distant, focused on the bigger picture. Exactly. And in chess, the player never loses. As night fell, Daniel returned to his cell, his mind calculating the next moves. The warden thought he was orchestrating the chaos. But Daniel had already seen through every trap, every hidden camera, every planted provocateur. By the time Riverside realized what was happening, the alliance would be unbreakable, loyal, disciplined, and prepared to act with precision. Daniel lay back on his bunk, eyes closing for the briefest moment. Tomorrow, the game would shift again. And this time, he wouldn't just react. He would dictate. The next morning, Riverside Federal was quieter than usual. Too quiet. Daniel moved the halls with his usual calm, noting every pair of eyes that lingered too long, every whisper carried through the vents. The warden's traps were still active, but he had already predicted them. In the corner of the cafeteria, Malik slid into the seat across from him. His voice was low, cautious. Look, you're making waves, Daniel. People are talking. You just turned a fight. They set up into a lesson. They're scared. And the warden? He's watching your every move. Daniel didn't flinch. He chewed slowly, deliberately, eyes scanning the room. Fear makes people predictable, he said quietly. I'm not here to scare them. I'm here to make them useful. Malik's eyes widened. Useful? You mean you're planning something? Daniel's smile was calm, controlled, almost imperceptible. Survival isn't enough. To thrive here, I need allies. People who understand what it means to win, without losing themselves. By midday, Daniel had identified a few potential allies. Inmates who weren't just strong, but smart, disciplined, and patient. First was Terrence Doc Johnson, a former combat medic whose calm hands had saved more lives than most guards could count. Next, Leo the Brain Martinez, an ex-lawyer with connections both inside and outside the prison. And finally, Malik, whose street smarts balanced Daniel's precision and strategic thinking. They met in the shadows of the laundry room, away from cameras. Here's the plan, Daniel began, voice low. We navigate the yard, the work assignments, and the warden's tests. We build influence quietly. One day, when the warden's overreach is exposed, we turn into leverage. Doc leaned forward. You really think we can take on the system without them noticing? Daniel's eyes were steady, unwavering. Not take it on. Navigate it. Bend it. Use it. And when the time comes, we'll control it. But only if we stay disciplined. That afternoon, Daniel's movements were deliberate. He let Rhino approach him again, this time with his pride partially rebuilt, a smug grin plastered across his bruised face. You ready for another round, champ? Rhino sneered. Daniel tilted his head. Calm, unafraid. I'm never ready for a fight I don't need to take, he said softly. Rhino's smirk faltered. What? Strategy beats brute force every time, Daniel replied, eyes unwavering. Rhino's crew exchanged uneasy glances. The whispers started again. That new guy, he's different. Different doesn't last here. By evening, word of Daniel's restraint, intelligence, and dominance spread quietly through the ranks. He wasn't just surviving fights anymore. He was earning respect. Fear mixed with admiration in equal measure. The secret alliance began taking shape. Small favors, shared knowledge, subtle guidance. Daniel taught his allies to read the patterns, anticipate the warden's moves, and protect themselves without drawing attention. Malik grinned. You're turning Riverside into a chessboard. Everyone else? Pawns. You? The player. Daniel's gaze was distant, focused on the bigger picture. Exactly. And in chess, the player never loses. As night fell, Daniel returned to his cell, his mind calculating the next moves. The warden thought he was orchestrating the chaos. But Daniel had already seen through every trap, every hidden camera, every planted provocateur. By the time Riverside realized what was happening, the Alliance would be unbreakable, loyal, disciplined, and prepared to act with precision. Daniel lay back on his bunk, eyes closing for the briefest moment. Tomorrow, the game would shift again. And this time, he wouldn't just react. He would dictate.